Ready. Thank you, committee. We now move back into session, and I'll take item 3 minutes of the meeting, Wednesday 7th of January 2026, planning readily licensing, and those are pages 5 to 10.
Can I move that the minutes are correct, but on page 5 and the minute 27, the word interest should be spelled correctly.
We're in West.
Sorry?
West.
Oh, West, sorry. West, yes, sorry. I don't know why I'm not got it. West, yeah.
Okay, so we will second that row. The second one.
But are there any other comments on accuracy?
Yeah, are there any other comments on accuracy of the minutes?
So someone could move.
Yeah, you move it?
So with the exception of Clive's change, I move the minutes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Second?
I second that.
So could all those of councillors in favour of the recommendation please raise their hands? Aye.
Yeah.
Councillor Michelle Jones.
Yeah.
She's nodded.
She knows.
Carry you.
Thank you. So we move on to planning applications, recommendations in the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 and the Planning Compensation Act 1991. Item 4, P250223, land adjacent to Hillcrest and Mitchell Crescent in Darren, Merthyrville, to consider report of the Director of Neighbourhood Services. And who's taking this one?
That'll be me, Chair.
Oh, thank you, David.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll just put some slides up at the same time. Okay, hopefully everyone can see that. Okay. So this application relates to an area of vacant grassland, measures approximately 1.4 hectares, located adjacent to Mitchell Crescent and Hillcrest. Full planning permission is sought for the construction of 47 homes, together with associated open spaces, landscaping and engineering works. A range of house types are proposed. This would comprise of 24 two-bedroom dwellings, 4 three-bedroom dwellings and 19 one-bedroom flats. A detailed landscaping scheme has been provided, which illustrates a number of open spaces would be incorporated into the layout of the development, which can then be used for recreation. It is noted that a large portion of the site would also be retained and enhanced to provide ecological and biodiversity benefits, along with hedgerow and tree planting and bioretention features. As a result of the consultation exercise, no objections were raised, subject to various conditions to ensure appropriate development of the site. And also as a result of the publicity exercise, one letter of objection was received, which generally raised concerns with the impact on Mitchell Crescent, in particular the loss of openness across the site, as well as concerns in respect of property value and the future occupiers of the residential units. It should be noted that the site is located within the settlement boundary and is allocated in the LDP for residential development. As such, the principle of the development is acceptable and would make a meaningful contribution to the provision of affordable housing within the county borough. Careful consideration has been given to the overall design and layout of the development, which seeks to provide appropriate frontages along the adjacent streets while addressing the considerable change in levels across the sloping site. The development follows a pragmatic approach to the site constraints and makes good use of the land and incorporates meaningful areas of open space that contributes to its placemaking. Overall, the design approach is acceptable and will not give rise to any unacceptable impacts on the character or appearance of the surrounding area. The layout of the development appropriately integrates with the neighbouring properties whilst minimising the potential for any overbearing or overlooking concerns. Appropriate measures would be put in place during the clearance of the site to minimise any impact on protected species or their habitats. And as part of the landscaping scheme, a number of features would be incorporated that would overall achieve a net benefit in biodiversity interest. The highway network is deemed to have capacity to accommodate the development and no highway safety concerns have been highlighted. The scheme would also include new footpaths along the boundaries of the site where they're not already provided, along with the provision of pedestrian routes crossing through the site that link up to the various open spaces. For the reasons set out in the report, it's considered that the development is acceptable, and it's been recommended that it be approved subject to the conditions set out on pages 26 to 31. So just to go through some of the slides with members. So Mitchell Crescent here is on the west, Hillcrest cross part of the southern boundary, and then you've got Hayden Terrace on the east side. You can see from the aerial photograph that it's mostly grassland. There are scattered trees and scrub particularly along the northern and eastern parts of the site. There's an existing sort of hard standing there, which I think is used informally for parking. And you can see that it's largely surrounded by residential development. So the layout of the scheme tries to provide frontages to the main streets, main highways. So you've got a number of properties that would have a frontage along the street in a similar manner to the other houses in the area. These properties are unique in that from the street of Mitchell Crescent, they would appear as two-storey dwellings, but because of the slope in nature, they actually have a lower ground floor level, which would front to the east onto into the development site itself at the lower level. Similar arrangement would be the case in the middle here, where you have the block of flats. They would appear two-storey from one side, three-storey on the lower end, with effectively flats, on each floor. The two lots of the flats would be serviced from the front, and the flats on the lower ground level would be served from the rear. Elsewhere in the site, they are effectively two-storey dwellings, and there's a bungalow in the corner of the site as well. As you can see, there's an area just here, sort of a triangular piece of land, which would be designed as an area of public open space with landscaping. And through the middle of the site is a pedestrian corridor, and at various intervals there are little areas of open space where people can sit and encourage some informal recreation. And this links then down to the bottom part of the site, which includes all of this area, this green sort of space here. Essentially, there's a mixture of existing vegetation being retained, but also along the boundaries of the site, we have a hedgerow sort of going along the rear garden boundaries, all the way across the boundaries of the site. The circles then is a number of trees that we planted, and there's also various shrubs and wildflower mixes to further enhance the biodiversity. At the top corner here, we've got a sort of a ramped access, which provides an easy link into the site from the top here. And this, I believe, it would be a sort of like an orchard area, so a number of trees, again, providing biodiversity interests. So you can see from these sections the sloping and changing level across the sites. This is running through the middle of the site, so the design is that the houses follow the sort of contours of the land, so they're relatively level. But when you're going from Mitchell Crescent at the top down towards Hayden Terrace, you can see that there's some big steps down. And so they've tried to be quite clever with the design of the houses, so that they're making good use of the land, where you've got two-storey on the higher levels, and then within the site then you've got the lower ground floor accommodation. To give you an impression of the site as it is, this is as it stands at the moment. As I say, it's mostly grassland with scrub. You can see obviously by the curvature of the site that it drops down quite a bit beyond the top part of the site, and that's evident in those sections. So we've got a couple of artist impressions of what the scheme might look like. So as you can see, this is along Mitchell Crescent. The houses themselves are designed to be effectively two-storey to kind of integrate with the existing houses in the area. Each of these would have their own driveway and garden areas to the front, being set back from the road. This illustration is about halfway down, well, near the bottom part of the site, looking up through the pedestrian corridors. So as you can see, there's obviously the levels of the site were a challenge. But this is an example of one of the areas of open space where people can sit and maybe play with kick a ball around and things like that. So it's good for recreation. And what they're trying to incorporate through these open spaces is the sustainable drainage system, where they've got a number of bioretention features that hold the water as it passes through the site. And there's an intention to have some areas where you might have small open channels where you can see a bit of surface water, sort of trickling through the spaces. The houses in the background there, that's those front onto Mitchell Crescent. So this is how it would be viewed from within the site. As I said earlier, this is the sort of big triangular area of open space. Along these streets, they're looking to incorporate bioretention features, as you can see here, which adds a bit of interest within the street itself, softens up the landscape, as well as a number of street trees. And this is just another view looking the other way. So this is at the point where the houses are on Mitchell Crescent. So even the ground floor flats, well, some of them are flats and some of them are additional accommodation for the 3-bedroom units, which is at the bottom end of the site. But you can see that they've all got their own sort of like little garden area, which provides a bit of defensible space between that and the sort of more public realms. And I think that's it. Thank you, Chair. If anyone's got any questions.
Do we have questions, please?
Yeah.
Clive?
Yes, I got two, Chair. I can refer to page 12 under the heading Proposed Development, and it's the second paragraph down. And it's particularly roughly the last sentence of that, where they refer to the fact that development would cater for 24 two-bedrooms, 4 3-bedroom dwellings, and 19 one-bedroom flats. Could David tell me, in his discussions with the developers, why they've only included 4 3-bedroom dwellings?
My understanding is that the developers have been working with the Strategic Housing Department on this scheme and trying to provide housing that meets the identified need. I don't think there's any explanation in the application itself as to why there was only a smaller number of 3-person properties. I suspect that there's a demand generally for higher demand for 1 and 2 bed accommodation, but obviously the scheme does incorporate a mixture of house types. As I said, there's a bungalow as well, so they've tried to incorporate a little bit of everything, I suppose. But I think there's an overall higher demand for 1 and 2 bedroom accommodation.
Yeah, I understand why the 1-bedroom, 19 one-bedroom flats are there, but the 2-bedroom, you're talking about a couple with 1 child. They have any more children, they eventually have to bring more from there. And there are families, David, on the waiting list who are waiting for 3-bedroom and some are waiting for 4-bedroom properties.
Yeah, I don't disagree that there's a demand for 3-bedroom as well. I can't give an explanation as to why only 4 of the properties. It may have been partly due to the design of the layout and what they can accommodate. The 3-bedroom properties in question are these at the top part of the site there. So they have a frontage onto the road, but they also then have accommodation on the lower ground floor, whereas these lower ones have the flats on the lower ground. I mean, they could have done those as 3-bedrooms as well, so they could have had all of those, and I suppose that they could change their mind on that in the future if they wanted to. But as to why it was only 4, I don't have an exact answer for that. We can only look at the application as presented to us.
Yeah, okay. Chair, the second question is on page 14, top of the page, and it refers to the top of the page and starting page 13, the outcome of the consultees. And if you look at Welsh Water, it says by the side of it, holding objection. Can you possibly explain, David, what that means, please?
Yeah, sure. So as I've set out in the report, essentially, Welsh Water often, in terms of dealing with surface water management, the intention as part of sustainable drainage is to deal with it on site. Because of the contamination on the site, the applicants have identified that due to the various remediation works that might be required, which includes putting membranes down, perforating that means that the site is not generally suitable for things like soakaways. So they've argued the point that it would be necessary for them to eventually discharge some of that surface water off-site. So what they're proposing as part of their strategy is that across the whole site itself, there are various bioretention features, which are a bit like rain gardens, but where the water eventually trickles to the bottom of the site. In the bottom corner here, they're proposing an attenuation system where water would be collected eventually as it goes through. Some of the water, I guess, would be dealt with by the planting itself, and their intention then is to discharge the surface water into the sewer system at a rate that would not exceed the current amount of water that comes off the site, without any development. So in other words, they are designing it so that there would be no additional impact on the existing sewer system. However, as a matter of principle, there's a need to put that forward and demonstrate that you've explored all other options of on-site drainage. These are things which would be addressed through the SAB application approval process to deal with the sustainable drainage, and as part of that, Welsh Water would be consulted. But as a matter of principle, because they haven't agreed any discharge off the site, that's why there's a holding objection. But our view is that if they go through the appropriate stages to demonstrate that there is no alternative and that water would have to discharge from the site, and if it's the case that there would be no impact or no change in the amount of water being discharged off the site than it does exist in, then it seems to be that would be acceptable in principle, and the detail of that would be a matter for the SAB approval body.
Okay, thanks. One other question in relation to something you said about the site being contaminated. Do we know, for example, what they found as contaminating the site? Or is that to be...
I think I've set it, I can't remember off the top of my head now. It was set out, some of the minerals were set out in the report. Let me just double check. So they said it was included elevated levels of PAH, which is polyacrylic aromatic hydrocarbons, lead and arsenic. These are things that you would sometimes find in the ground, but they were at levels slightly elevated that require some mitigation. So typically it would be that the levels would be eventually there'll be a membrane put across any exposed areas of the soft landscaping, and 600 mil usually of clean topsoil will then be brought in to ensure that as part of the planting, to provide a sufficient barrier there to its subsequent use for residential.
Thank you.
Any further questions? No, I've got one, and if I can remember it. Through the site, there's a pathway that joins Hillcrest with Penryn Garden City. Is that going to be retained?
Which path are you referring to? That goes through the bottom of Hillcrest?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think the development seeks to alter that. I think that's a potential. If I remember rightly, I think. Let me just check if I can show you on it. Is it through this part down here?
Where the bungalows are now, right at the bottom.
Yeah. So if it's in this area here, then there's no proposals to change any access arrangements there. I think there's a proposed active travel route coming up through from from Garden City up through to Hillcrest. So there's no change to the access around here.
Okay, thank you. And I know I've been involved with the one objection from the resident. Can you just inform the committee why the loss of the aspect was not taken on board? Is it that nobody has a right to views, etc.?
So we, as part of the assessment, as we've indicated in the report, the site is allocated for housing, so there would inevitably be some form of development across the site as part of our LDP strategy. The developer has tried to integrate the development in with the surrounding area. Obviously, I know there's some houses across adjacent to Mitchell Crescent, which would sit opposite some of the existing houses, but this is not really an uncommon arrangement that you would expect in this sort of environment. I think it provides an appropriate response. They have obviously tried to integrate it as sensitively as they can by presenting two-storey frontages onto the street rather than larger properties. It would have been difficult. I think it was suggested in the objection, why couldn't it be pushed further down the site? But there are sort of technical reasons in terms of the layout and the constraints of the site that would prevent that. But as I said earlier, there's quite a large area of the site that's not developed. But obviously, any development of the site, would inevitably result in some loss of openness by its very nature.
Okay, thank you. Are we any further questions? Are we any comments? Right.
One comment, Mr. Chair.
So, John, sorry, I didn't see your hand, John.
Yeah, it was a question, Chair, if that's all right.
Oh yeah, go on.
Yeah. Dave, I take the entrance going into the new build there is on the hill as you go down to Hillcrest, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, there's two points of entrance at the bottom here. Yeah.
Yeah. Has the developer said anything really about widening that road a bit? Because as you come down that hill, there's always a line of cars parked on the right-hand side nearest to Hillcrest all the way down, and it's a very narrow road. Have they said about widening it at all to allow easier access in?
Well, I understand that the Highway Department had some detailed discussions with the developer, certainly because we've got a bit of a kind of a looped access into the site, and the top end is a shared surface. So there was some discussion about that and making sure that the junctions into the site were acceptable. As to the requirement of widening the road, that was not an issue that was raised by the highway engineers as something to put forward. But obviously, as part of the proposed works, there is a new footpath to be provided, which effectively would be incorporated within the site itself to provide that. I don't know if there's, because of the level changes, whether there's scope to widen it further, but this is the scheme that's been put forward, and the highway engineers haven't raised it as an issue.
Yeah, because as you come down, you've probably noticed there's a car park on like an hard standing, if you like, on the left-hand side as you come down, which is used by residents to park their cars. So if that's going to be taken away, obviously you're going to have those cars then out on the highway again. That was a concern for me, really,
Yeah, across the site itself, there's at least one parking space for all of the units. So I think the houses themselves have, across the top, have 2 parking spaces. I believe there's, 4 visitor parking spaces within the scheme as well. So the parking needs of the development is met within the site. But I take your point about, the displacement of the informal parking area there. But as I say, the highway engineers felt that could either be accommodated, I guess, on the existing highway, and that they didn't raise any highway issues with that.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Thank you.
Any comments? Clive?
Chair, I've welcomed the fact that this is a residential development of 47 units of accommodation. you can see from my question, I'm a little disappointed that they've only included 4 3-bedroom properties there. But there's no doubt about it that these 47 units of accommodation are badly needed within the county borough of Merthyr Tydfil.
Thank you. Anyone else? Can we have somebody to
I'll propose.
propose?
I'll second it.
Okay, so could all members in agreement with the officer's recommendation please raise their hands? That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. Right, we'll go to item number 5. P250317, Bryn Hyfryd House, Kilsanos Lane, Kevin Coyd. Dave, or you taking this one again?
I'm taking this one, Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Gar.
Right, okay.
Sorry, Gar.
Thank you. Right, this proposal involves construction of a new garage at Bryn Hyfryd House, Kilsanos Lane, Kevin Coyd. The application is presented for committee for determination on the basis that the applicant works with the council and advises on planning applications occasionally. The property itself lies inside the settlement limits, and the proposal seeks planning permission for the construction of a garage within the garden of the house, close to the western boundary adjacent to the property Bryn Arwell. The proposal is a double garage with a stone wall finish at the front and rendered walls elsewhere, with a slate roof and 3 roof lights on the front elevation of the roof. Broadly, dimensions of the proposed garage are 10 metres by 8 metres by 6.5 metres high to the top of the pitched roof. The garage is an upper floor within the pitched roof that would be used for additional domestic storage space. Given the difference in levels between the house and the garage, there will be a direct access into the upper floor of the garage from the patio area to the front of the house. Consultation with neighbours in respect to the application has not resulted in any objections or observations being submitted in respect to the proposed development. The proposed development is consistent with planning policy at the local and national level, and the proposed development does not raise any concerns with regard to highway safety or the amenity and privacy of adjacent dwellings or the ecology of the area. And what's recommended is approval subject to conditions. So if you can walk, Dave, shall we walk the members through the slides here? And broadly, there's an aerial shot there, and you can see from that there's already an existing parking area on the part of the curtilage where the applicant intends to build this garage. And if we move down through again, Dave, right, that just shows the general arrangement, and there you can pick up the embankment where you can see that the garage itself will be at a much lower level, and more or less at the same level floor-wise as Bryn Arwell, the adjacent property to the west. And that illustrates it a little better. And there you can see the sort of the almost bridged access across the embankment onto the upper floor. There's just a general photograph showing the existing parking area. You can see the properties behind there are already at a much higher level anyway, and the garage will sit well below it. And that property you see is Bryn Arwell. Again, you see the parking area in relation to the neighbouring property. And as I said earlier, the floor levels will be much the same. And I think that's what it, isn't it? Yeah, same. Any questions?
Yeah. Have we any questions?
Don't appear to be any questions from members, Chair.
No.
Comments?
Yeah. Any comments?
No comments, Chair.
Okay. Can we have somebody propose it?
I'll propose it, Chair.
Scott. Second?
Second, Chair.
Thank you.
So could all members in agreement with the officer's recommendation please raise their hands? That's carried unanimously, Chair.
Thank you. So we move on to item number 6. P250333, 44 Aberfan Road, Aberfan, Merthyr Tydfil. Consider a report from Director of Neighbourhood Services. Who's taking this one? Sorry.
That'd be myself, Chair.
Yeah, sorry, Dave. Ernie's got his hand up.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Chair. Sorry, Chair. I will have to go now.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Declan, you still here or have you gone?
Thanks, Con.
Thanks, Scott. Okay.
Are we still called?
Yeah, there's 5 here. We need 6 to be corporate. So yes, we're fine, Chair.
Okay, right. Thank you, Dave, if you can carry on.
Okay, sure. I'll just share this one. Okay, so this application relates to an existing residential property along Aberfan Road. It's noted in the report that the property is mid-terraced. However, I should just correct this and say that it's actually semi-detached, although it does sit uniformly adjacent to the terraces. So in most respects, when you see it, it does look like it's part of the terrace. But the proposed development seeks a change in the use of the property from a 4-bedroom dwelling to a 5-bedroom HMO. With the exception of a new toilet window provided on the side elevation, there are no external alterations to the property, and the only internal alteration would be to use the existing dining room as a bedroom instead on the ground floor. As a result of the consultation exercise, no objections have been raised. However, as a result of the publicity exercise, there were a total of 31 letters of objection and a petition against the development, which contains 956 signatures. A range of issues were raised, and these have been summarised in the report. Given the location of the property within the settlement limits and within a predominantly residential area, it's considered that the proposed residential use of the property, albeit of a different nature, remains acceptable in principle. The development would not give rise to any significant concerns in terms of its impact on the character or appearance of the surrounding area or on the amenities of neighbouring occupiers. It's acknowledged that the parking in the area is generally congested and that the property does not afford any designated off-street parking provision. There would normally be a requirement of 1 parking space per bedroom up to a maximum of 3, which would be the requirement for the existing property as well as the HMO. Whilst the proposal includes the provision of an additional bedroom, the parking requirements would not differ to that required for the existing property, so that wouldn't require an increase in the parking provision. Indeed, the creation of an extra bedroom in itself does not require planning permission. Given that there is no change in the parking requirements and given the existing arrangement for the existing property, the Head of Engineering and Highways has not raised any highway safety concerns. Accordingly, for the reasons set out in the report, it's recommended that the application be granted permission, subject to the conditions set out on page 48. So just to go through some of the slides. So the property in question is just here, 44 Aberfan Road, as outlined on the smaller plan here. As you can see, the 2 floor plans on the left are the existing arrangement. So at the moment, we've got a kitchen, dining, sitting room and a living room on the ground, and then 4 bedrooms and a bathroom upstairs. This essentially remains the same. There's some minor alteration to provide an extra toilet in the bathroom there, but the living room on the ground floor, this living room here would be converted into a bedroom to bring it up to 5 in total. So the following photos, that's the property as it currently stands, front and back. There's a little access down the side, and in the back garden area there's an intention to provide storage for bikes and any wheelie bins. As you can see, the property in question is just up here on the left, and the views down the street, as you can see, there is, either a considerable amount of on-street parking, or there's traffic orders in place to limit parking in certain areas. Again, the property, I think, is this one here, and again, looking down the street, you can see again, there's parking. It is limited, and it's generally to one side of the highway. Although when you go further around the corner, there is sometimes the odd space, but again, that's still congested with limited parking in the area. But as I say, despite the limited parking, the requirements are the same for the HMO as it is for the existing, so there would be no change in circumstance from that respect. Thank you, Chair. Any questions?
Right, what I'm going to do is, because there's a public element speaking matter to this, although we haven't got the applicant or any objectors, we do have Councillor Darren Roberts wishing to speak on the matter. So if I go to him first and we come back to David with questions afterwards, can I call in Darren to have you input that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Chair, Planning Committee members and officers, thank you for allowing me to speak at this afternoon's committee meeting. On behalf of the residents of Aberfan, I would like to go on record and object to the proposed change of use of 44 Aberfan Road, Aberfan, Merthyr Tydfil, to a house of multiple occupancy, an objection made on planning grounds. The proposal constitutes an over-intensive form of development that is not appropriate to the scale, layout or residential context of the property based on its location. The intensified use would result in material harm to neighbouring residential amenity arising from increased noise, activity and movement associated with a high occupancy use. The application fails to demonstrate that the development would not result in unacceptable parking stress, contrary to what David just mentioned in his opening speech. Having lived in Aberfan all my life, I can categorically say that the parking and the congestion has got worse. So taking me back, the likely increase of vehicle ownership combined with the absence of adequate off-street parking provision would exacerbate existing on-street parking pressures in the surrounding areas and give rise to highway safety concerns. Insufficient detail has been provided in respect of refuse and recycling storage and management. Given the nature of the proposal use, this raises a clear risk of visual harm to the street scene and obstruction to the public realm. Other concerns are as follows. The property sits in the middle of two primary schools and a very busy childcare setting. Just 2 doors away from the property that has recently been identified to be used as a small children's home. Vulnerable children would reside there, one at a time, along with carers. The extremely close proximity of this house of multiple occupancy, if granted, is of real great concern to myself and residents. The property owner resides in Watford, hardly local. Residents firmly believe that they purchased this property with the intent to capitalise on future revenue by changing the property from its current residential status to that of a house of multiple occupancy. Make no mistake, this is in their best interests and certainly not in the best interest of the Aberfan residents. Chair, I submitted a petition containing 956 signatures on behalf of residents. Residents who put their faith in me as one of their elected members for Aberfan, Merthyr Vale and Mount Pleasant. I have and always will represent residents who elect me to the very best of my ability. To sum up, the proposal threatens to introduce an overcrowded, high-impact HMO that could irreversibly damage the character, safety and livability of the area. Approval would sanction the deliberate conversion of a family home into a profit-driven occupancy unit and predictable and possible unacceptable consequences. The development would import chronic noise, congestion, waste issues and transient occupancy onto a residential road that runs through the very heart of Aberfan. The proposal could prioritise maximum rent extraction over minimum standards of dignity, safety and fundamentally community impact. For the reasons set out above, application P/25/033 44 Aberfan Road should be refused. I hope the members of this committee agree with the comments that are raised today on behalf of the very worried residents of Aberfan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Darren. I'll now move on to questions to the planners for clarity first.
Questions on the report, Chair.
And now we move on to questions on the report, please.
Are there any questions?
One for myself, possibly.
Oh, okay, if you go first then, Scott.
Yeah, My concern relates to the images currently used for displaying locations in respect to obviously our planning things. In this case, you have an image there from October 2021. Now, if you scroll as you did, obviously highlighting up and down that street, you are showing sections of the road that are visibly congested and highlighted that there are some spaces then between vehicles. What you're not highlighting is the fact that those spaces are actually junctions in the majority of the cases. How can we keep using Google Images, Google Maps that are completely and utterly outdated to the current standard? I personally think we should now be taking photos. Officers should be out on the streets taking photos prior to these, so you actually get a relevant thing now. Can we actually, I want to know why we just keep using Google Images, because it doesn't give representation.
Well, we use a mixture of the Google Images to assist in showing some of the wider context issues. We do have site-specific issues, site-specific photos as well. In this instance, we've used the Google Images, but that's not to suggest we're trying to show that there is capacity or isn't capacity. I think we've acknowledged that the street is congested. I did make reference to the fact that there is some space there, but that's not to say it's true all the time. And that's the problem when you take any photo of the site, you take that as a snapshot. You know, if you go there during the day when people are perhaps in work, it might look like it's less congested than in the night. So I don't think the Google image has done it any discredit in that regard.
I just think using Google Images personally is slightly outdated, and I think it should be a live photo for the purpose of the application. But I take your answer. Thank you, David.
Great. For the next question, Clive.
Right. On page 42, top of the page, there are a number of points made there. It's continuing from page 41 in relation to all the objections. One of them on page 42, halfway down at the top of the page, it states monitoring and supervision. No details of how the HMO would be managed with the applicant living outside the area. We've been told he lives in Watford. So with the discussions that the planners have had over a period of time, and we have no chance, Chair, of asking the owner of this building, the landlord, any questions, because I presume they've said they're not attending, that it's not scheduled. So this is another case of another HMO owner that, as elected members of the Plan Committee, we cannot ask questions of them. So could the planners tell me what are the proposals for managing this property if this application is approved tonight?
Just to comment on initially on the attendance to speak, I think that's an option for agents or developers. It's not a requirement for them to speak, but obviously they do miss an opportunity to have their say if there are things they can clarify on. In terms of the management of the property, as I understand it, no specific management plan was put forward. The way the properties are managed is usually outside of the control of the planning department. If there are issues, then they tend to fall with other authorities such as the police or environmental health, and obviously any management company or the owner of the property to deal with any issues themselves.
Well, do you accept, David, it's a bit late then if a planning application is approved and with 5 potential tenants likely to be living there, if things kick off, and it's usually late at night, and particularly on the weekend, if they've got no management proposals, things are going to happen.
I would agree. It would be in the applicant's own interest to ensure that there's an appropriate management plan, contact details of who to call if there's a problem, etc. But the behaviour of people is outside the control of the planning process. So we can only look at it as the nature of the use, which in our view is often very, very much akin to a normal residential property, albeit the way it's used is slightly different. And so we have to still nonetheless assess the application based on the information provided.
On page 45, top of the page, the first paragraph there, halfway through that, it states, and I quote, "Indeed, given its scale and the nature of the use, which would not differ greatly from that of a typical building, it is unlikely to give rise to a great impact on residential amenity that would warrant the refusal of the application." So that, for me, is an opinion that because this has been changed from what was all regarded as a family use to 5 different tenancies, this would not affect the area at all.
So our assessment on that is always looking at how the existing property is currently used and how it could be used. So as I've said in previous cases, the property as a residential dwelling can be occupied by up to 6 people living together as a single household. It can also be rented for between any number of people, typically up to 6. In this instance, they are increasing the bedroom by 1, so taking it to 4, from 4 to 5. I don't think having 1 extra person residing at the property would significantly change the impacts it might have on the area in terms of noise or coming and going of people from the property. And so we have to assess it based on how an existing residential property would operate. I don't think the comings and goings of people as part of a HMO would lead to any greater impact on the neighbouring properties, at least to an extent that would warrant a refusal of the application.
So you don't accept, David, that changing it from what would be a normal family living there to, I say again, 5 different tenancies, because there's got to be a tenancy agreement for each individual living there, and they're all going to be adults, won't change the position at all. And in relation to car parking, you've answered or tried to answer the question about the car parking there. It is distinctly possible that there will be 5 additional vehicles there trying to find a space on the roadway there. So it's not going to make any difference. You are indicating that it's absolutely no different to a family living there.
There is a difference in the nature of the residential use. Obviously, there is some differences between a family and other people living together. But as it stands now, if they created a 5th bedroom, which they wouldn't require planning permission, you could still already have 5 people living there, unrelated people, so a non-family living there as a single household. That would not require planning permission. That would still fall under the current use of the property. You could equally have a family with 2 or 3 children there, each of an age that are learning to drive, and so the impact on parking would be fairly similar. Equally, the 5 people there who are residing in the HMO, some of them may not be able to drive. Perhaps they can't afford to, perhaps they don't have a license. So you've got to, unfortunately, it's the scenario that within the scope of what you can do with a residential dwelling is quite extensive, and when you compare that then to what is being sought under a HMO, it's very difficult to see the differences then.
Chair, we'll have to agree to disagree on that particular answer. Let's take page 47. Under the heading Response to Representations. And the second part of that, I quote, "The management and licensing of a HMO lies outside of the planning controls and is therefore not a planning consideration when assessing the merits of the proposal. HMO properties would generally be managed by the owner-developer, and any concerns regarding its management, such as overcrowding, unsafe environments due to fire safety breach regulations, improper disposal of waste, and on poor living conditions, would be a matter for the Council's Environmental Health Division. We don't know tonight how this is going to be managed. We haven't got a clue. I would suggest there'd be some difficulty in trying to manage this from Middle England in Watford. My question there is that there is there's a license required for a HMO from the Environmental Health Department. But am I right in saying that it's based on 6 occupants in a HMO or more?
I just come in there, just to clarify, the HMO licence requirement kicks in when there are 5 occupants, but the property has to be over 3 stories as well.
So, right, so it's 5, and this property is not 3 stories.
No, 2-storey properties.
So they can get over that one without requiring a licence.
Yeah, the licence wouldn't be required in this case, yeah.
No. And in any case, well, I'll make a comment about that in my comments. I think that's all the questions I have at the moment, Jen.
Lee?
Sorry, Chair, that was a legacy hand, I think.
All right.
Any further questions?
Yeah. Any further questions on this?
No.
No. Any comments? No. Your lines are Clive. And Scott.
Yes.
Right. This is another landlord, a typical example of a private landlord making a great deal of money with 5 tenants. Inevitably, because of the very nature of the single adult individuals likely to be placed in this property, there will be a constant change of different tenants. And this is evidence for that, as proven elsewhere, here and in other authorities. Again, this is a 4-bedroom property which will not be available to a large family for either sale or rental. The natural cohesion of families living in Aberfan Road will be broken. And my understanding is there is no other HMO in Aberfan Road. This does not mean that in future applications for other HMOs in the same road will be brought forward. And on the question of licence, it is something that, in my view, should be dealt with and examined as part of the planning process, because having a licence for these properties is extremely important, because the Environmental Health Departments, in accordance with the various legislation, can stipulate what should be and shouldn't be in a HMO. In this case, because it's below 3-storey and it's 5-bedroom, there's no need for a licence from the Environmental Health Department. And I think that is a gap which needs to be looked at.
Thank you, Clive. Scott.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Clive. Firstly, I just want to thank my ward colleague Darren for his fantastic representation on this application on behalf of the community. Brilliant, well done, Dar. I just want to highlight that a site visit was requested for us to go and have a look at this, but we were refused this reason, highlighting that a site visit wouldn't provide any greater detail than what's in the report. That being said, again, I fully agree with my ward colleague's representation and his requests for members to refuse the application. We are elected to represent the best interest, views and concerns of the residents, and in this case, given the public feedback, I cannot and will not support this application.
Okay. Have we got any further comments? Have we got a proposer?
I'll propose it.
Thank you, Clive. Any seconder?
I'm happy to second to make progress, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, so could all councillors in agreement with the officer's recommendation, which is for approval, please raise their hands. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so could all members not in agreement with the officer's recommendation, please raise their hands. Okay. And could any councillor wishing to abstain please raise their hand? Okay, so that recommendation is not carried, Chair.
Right.
So we now need to move to members' reasons for their reason for refusal of this application.
Chair, if I can, I'd like to obviously stress on the impact of the highway safety in this element. You've got 5 individuals who are potentially coming into this property. That could potentially be 5 additional vehicles in an already unbelievably congested area. The images that we did see obviously highlighted just one road. Down the side streets, they're also extremely packed. So in this circumstance, I would like to say that the unsatisfactory impact on highway safety, contrary to policy SW11 of the LDP, that would be my reasoning. Chair.
So is there any other reason for refusal, or are we looking at that particular one reason? It's contrary to policy SW11. Do the planners have anything in relation to say as to whether it's obviously a material planning consideration in relation to that reason? No.
Can you repeat the reason for refusal again?
Yeah, so I've just highlighted obviously the unsatisfactory impact on highway safety, contrary to policy SW11 of the LDP.
Unsatisfactory highway safety. I mean, I would probably suggest that you refer to make it a little bit more specific to include, the parking, due to the parking congestion in the area or something like that, just so it's a bit clearer for.
I thought you said that.
I highlighted obviously that the reason behind it is in relation to the parking and the congestion. So yeah, I'm happy to add those additional wording if it sort of satisfies.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we're fairly clear. There is one reason for refusal, which is planning. Sorry, Craig. Or was Dave?
Craig?
Yeah, so I was just going to come in and clarify in sort of light of previous decisions that we've had on these type of applications, and as the officer's recommendation has not been approved today, members do have the opportunity to defer the application to seek further legal advice as to whether any proposed reasons for refusal are material planning considerations, or members can proceed to determine the application today based on the legal advice provided at the meeting.
I mean, the legal advice is members do have to refuse applications on material planning grounds. You have to be satisfied that that is a material planning consideration. We've gone through policy SW11. You've told me it's a highway safety impact and parking congestion. You can take a view as to whether you want to defer it to take further legal advice. The legal advice I would give you would be no different to what I'm telling you at the moment. So you can make a decision. Either you want to defer it to do that, or you can refuse it on the ground that you've just told committee that one reason for refusal.
I think one strong reason for refusal is better than multiple sort of watered down refusal. So I'm happy to proceed with just the one refusal if that's okay with the committee.
Okay, so we have one reason for refusal, which is what's already. David?
I was just to to just highlight off the back of what you were saying there, Geraint, is that in terms of the planning reason, if for any reason the applicant chooses to appeal and it goes to the planning inspectorate to determine, you just need to be satisfied that that you can adequately demonstrate that the change of use to HMO would give rise to greater highway impact, bearing in mind what we've set out in the report. Otherwise, there is a risk that if we're found to be unreasonable in our assessment, that costs could be awarded against the council for not being able to defend our position properly. Just thank you, Chair.
Appreciate it. And obviously highlighting myself and Darren are constantly sort of touting highways for some kind of safety mitigations throughout that street constantly. So it is something that has been sort of impacting for many, many years. So yeah, I'm still happy to proceed with this.
Okay, so we have a recommendation for refusal, which is on the ground that has been put forward by Scott. Do we have anyone that's prepared to second that reason for refusal?
I'll second it.
You'll second it. Thank you. So could all members in agreement for that reason for refusal please raise their hands? Okay, any members not in agreement with that reason for refusal, please raise their hand. Okay. And any member wishing to abstain, could they please raise their hand? No. So, okay, thank you. Yeah. So that is refused for the reason given previously, Chair.
Okay. The items 7, 8, 9 are information reports. Item 10, any other business deemed urgent by the chair? I haven't. Thank you for attending. May you God go with you, as young Dave Allen used to say.
Thank you,
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Good night, all.
Thank you, Chair. Good night, all.